Welcome to the Hope for Today podcast. Today is day 3.
Today we're diving into what happens right after the flood. We've seen the judgment, but now we get to the aftermath. The promise, the new beginning, and, well, the persistence of the human heart.
Exactly. Let's start right at that turning point in Genesis 8. Completely different world, really, than where we left off.
A completely different world.
Yesterday was all about the overwhelming judgment of the flood, but now the focus just shifts entirely. We're talking about mercy and, well, grace.
Right. We're stepping out of the ark.
And onto a brand new earth. This passage, it really reveals God's heart, his unbreakable promises, and the very foundation for human life after this massive disaster.
It's the ultimate pivot point in the whole early story. And our mission today is really to understand how God establishes stability. He does it through a covenant. He sets boundaries through law.
The very first laws for all of humanity.
Exactly. And he continues to patiently work out his plan, even when, and we see this almost immediately, human flaw returns.
Instantly. Yeah.
With Noah, then at Babel. So we're really watching the divine framework for a renewed world being laid down. And it's all rooted in God's commitment, not our behavior.
I think the most moving phrase we get right at the start of chapter 8 is just so simple.
But God remembered Noah.
Yes. It's such a beautiful example of divine initiative. I mean, the world was chaos, but God had a purpose and a person he remembered, and what followed that remembrance was the complete reversal of the judgment.
And it wasn't fast, was it? It was so deliberate. God sends a wind, the springs of the deep, and the floodgates are sealed, and the water begins this slow, methodical recession. The precision of the timeline here always grabs me. It shows us that God's actions are measured. They're never frantic.
So tell us about that timeline. I mean, we're talking about a family cooped up in this enormous box for, what, over a year? What was that slow restoration like?
Well, the waters receded over 150 days. Then the ark finally settles on the mountains of Ararat. That's in the 7th month, a real moment of rest.
But they couldn't just get out.
Oh no, they had to wait months longer. It wasn't until the 10th month that the tops of the mountains were even visible. Can you imagine the psychological stress of waiting that long, seeing nothing but water, and then finally, just the peaks of mountains?
And Noah was, he was cautious during that time. He started his own little scouting mission with the birds to see if the ground was ready.
He sends out the raven first.
Right, which is a hardy bird. It just flies back and forth. But the dove was the real indicator.
The dove is the delicate one. The first time he sends it out, it comes right back. It finds absolutely no place to perch.
So the earth is still completely waterlogged.
Completely.
But then 7 days later, he sends it again. And this is where the hope, it just breaks through. The dove returns with a freshly plucked olive leaf.
That little leaf, that was the proof. It meant life was springing up again. After another 7 days, he sends it one last time, and it just doesn't come back. The earth was ready.
What's so critical for us to learn here, though, is that even with all that proof, the olive leaf, the dove not returning Noah, didn't rush out.
He waited. He waited until God specifically commanded him to leave, and that was almost 2 months later. It just teaches you everything about trusting God's timing and his authority, even when all the signs look good.
And what's the very first thing he does when he steps onto this new earth? It's not building a shelter.
No, it's worship.
It's worship. He immediately builds an altar and offers burnt offerings. It just shows the absolute priority of gratitude when we get a new start from God. The very first thing to occupy the new earth was devotion.
And it's in response to that act of worship, that pleasing aroma, that God makes one of the most profound commitments in the whole Bible. He essentially speaks to himself.
Right.
He says he will never again curse the ground or destroy all living creatures like he just had.
Which is just a staggering commitment because he immediately gives the reason why he should do it again but won't.
He says that even though the inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood, God is basically saying, I know they're flawed, but my commitment to stability will override that flaw.
And that's the whole point, isn't it?
That's everything.
Yeah.
And that commitment translates into the foundational stability we rely on every single day. That promise that seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. That is the bedrock of civilization. It's an assurance of security guaranteed by God's nature, not ours.
So after securing the physical world, God moves to the social and the spiritual framework. He immediately gives Noah and his sons the original command from the garden.
The new mandate. Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. The project is back on, but, under new rules,
Definitely new rules. A new order is established. Human authority, diet, it all changes. The fear and dread of mankind now falls on the animal kingdom.
which suggests a new kind of distance, an authority that maybe wasn't there before the flood, and the diet expands. Before it was green plants, now everything that lives and moves is given as food.
It's a huge expansion of freedom, but that freedom comes with a very clear, non-negotiable law.
You cannot eat meat with its lifeblood still in it. This just emphasizes the sacredness of life, that it belongs only to the Creator.
And the second law is even more foundational. It's about accountability for life. God says he'll demand an accounting for lifeblood from animals and especially from humans. He institutes capital law.
And the reason for it is so profound.
What's the reason given for that severity?
It all comes down to one core truth. Mankind is made in the image of God. So to shed human blood isn't just a biological act, it's an attack on the very image of the Creator. That principle is the foundation for justice. It elevates human worth above everything else.
Following these laws, God establishes this everlasting covenant. He promises Noah, his descendants, and every living creature
Every living creature, it's so inclusive.
that never again will a flood destroy all life. It's an absolute unconditional promise.
And he gives a visible sign for it, the rainbow. And what's so fascinating is that it's not just for us to look up and remember. God says, when the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember my covenant.
So it's God reminding himself of his own unbreakable word.
Exactly. It's this beautiful image of light, the promise passing through water, the reminder of judgment, to seal his faithfulness forever.
So God lays down this perfect framework, but, well, within just a few verses, humanity proves it's the weak link.
Yes, the return of human failure, and it's through Noah himself. This righteous man plants a vineyard, gets drunk, and becomes uncovered in his tent. That inclination toward evil God just mentioned, it's right there.
It is dishearteningly quick, and the consequences play out through his sons, which sets up the entire future of the nations.
You see this stark contrast in how they react. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness. He didn't show respect. Instead, he goes and tells his brothers, almost eager to shame him.
But Shem and Japheth, they're the model of reverence. They take a garment, they walk in backward to cover their father, and they specifically turn their faces away so they wouldn't see his nakedness.
That discretion, that respect is immediately honored. When Noah wakes up, his prophetic words basically cement the future. The curse falls specifically on Canaan, Ham's son.
And the blessing is pronounced over Shem.
Over Shem, and a prayer for God to extend Japheth's territory. This really establishes the spiritual and eventually the geographic order for the next age.
And that geography is what we get in Chapter 10, the Table of Nations. It shows how all the nations of the world sprang from these three sons, spreading out according to their clans and languages.
And one figure in particular from the line of Ham really stands out, Nimrod.
Right.
He's described as a mighty warrior and a mighty hunter before the Lord. But that's not necessarily a compliment. Nimrod is the archetype of the rebellious strongman. He's the first great political figure who tries to consolidate power.
And he founds these powerful cities, Babylon, Uruk, Nineveh. He represents this rise of human ambition to build earthly kingdoms, which is often in opposition to God's command to spread out.
He's making a name for himself.
Yeah.
And fittingly, in the line of Shem, we get a little clue where this is all headed. A man named Peleg is born, and it says his name means division, because in his time, the earth was divided.
Which points us directly to the Tower of Babel. So we've just seen the world start to spread out, and then we hit Babel, a critical moment. The whole world still had one language, and they all settled together in one place.
And this unity, focus on the wrong goal, it just proved disastrous. Their motivation was explicitly defiant. God said, fill the earth, scatter.
And what did they say?
They said, let's build a city and a tower that reaches to the heavens. Their goals were totally self-focused. First, to make a name for ourselves, and second, to prevent being scattered.
Corporate pride, striving for their own glory and actively rejecting God's path for them.
And the divine observation is so crucial. The Lord comes down, and he notes the power of this unified rebellion.
Yeah.
His conclusion is sobering. Because they're one people with one language, nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them.
Which is not a compliment.
Not at all. It's a recognition of the destructive potential of unified human pride when it's focused on itself.
So the judgment wasn't arbitrary. It was, in a way, protective.
It was. God confused their language. It immediately stopped the building project and forced their scattering, which fulfilled the very mandate they were trying to avoid. And that's why the place was called Babel, meaning confusion.
It's a huge lesson about the danger of making a name for ourselves instead of following God's path.
Right. The scattering was actually an act of mercy. It established boundaries to curb that unchecked human ambition.
So we've just seen the world shatter into all these languages and territories. Why does the story then immediately zoom in on one, seemingly boring family line?
That's where the patient, sovereign nature of God just shines through. Immediately after the chaos of Babel, the camera narrows drastically. Chapter 11 gives us this crucial genealogy that's so easy to skip over.
But it's not just a list.
It's God patiently tracing the one specific line through which his greater promise, the ultimate solution to human rebellion, will be realized. It's the bridge from Babel to the birth of a new nation.
We're tracing the Semitic line, the line of Shem's blessing, all the way down to a man named Terah, the father of Abram.
Right, and we zoom in on Terah's immediate family, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. We learn Haran dies early, leaving his son Lot. These are the key players for the next big chapter.
And we also have to note the most critical obstacle that's just dropped into this family summary.
Abram's wife.
Sarai. She was childless. It says she was not able to conceive. That detail is highlighted for a reason.
It tells us right from the start that the great promise of a nation, the nation that will eventually bless all the scattered nations of Babel, it's not going to happen through natural means.
It's going to require divine intervention.
It sets the stage for a miracle. But first, there's this stalled journey. Terah takes Abram, Lot, and Sarai, and they set out from heading for Canaan, the promised land. But they stop. They settle in a place called Haran, and Terah dies there. They had the right destination in mind, but they just stalled out before they reached the promise.
This whole journey we've taken today, from the security of the covenant to the division at Babel, it is so profound. But the core truth remains unshaken, doesn't it?
It does. God is sovereign. He keeps his promises, and he establishes boundaries, whether cosmic like the seasons or social like the languages, even when humanity constantly rebels.
The lesson really is about stability. Even when our own lives feel chaotic or divided, like Babel, God's foundational promise, like the rainbow, it remains fixed.
Absolutely. And now we're standing at the very edge of the next great story of faith. The entire hope for the future rests on a sterile woman, an aging man, and a destination they couldn't quite reach on their own.
Tomorrow, we are going to see what happens when God calls that one man, Abram, out of that stalled journey in Haran and begins to unveil the promise that will not only reshape history, but will ultimately provide the means of blessing for all those nations scattered at Babel.
That was it for day 3. Meet you on day 4 tomorrow.